about it's 6 o'clock, so how about we kick this meeting off, please? May we have attendance and roll call?
Boyd,
Here?
Goldbeck. Here. Pelagian,
Here.
Hatwick, McNary,
Here.
Roper, Simmons,
Okay. And is on to item number 2, meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments or corrections to make to the meeting minutes?
Chair,
Yes.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to abstain because I missed about 80% of that on approving
On the
the
meeting minutes?
last minutes.
Okay.
So I don't know if you have a quorum to,
We
do that.
do not. So we should postpone that till next month's
set to
meeting,
next month.
please. All right, so we'll push meeting minutes next. Thank you very much. On to item number 3, the agenda. Is any changes to the agenda? Shouldn't be, since there's only one item. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve.
And a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Agenda's approved. Item number 4, consent calendar. There's no items on the consent calendar. No continue matters. Item 5. On to item 6, commission items.
Item A, ID 18-0646. Staff received a demolition permit application from the owner of the Herndon Substation Control Building located at 7430 North Weber Avenue on April 17, 2018. Pursuant to the city's general plan policy, HCR 2G, Historic Preservation staff reviewed the demolition permit for the potential that the building might be eligible for listing in the local register of historic resources. Herndon Substation, located on a large tract of land located between the San Joaquin River to the north and the community of Herndon to the south, was originally constructed in 1931 and included its only extant building, the 2-story control building. Within the historical resource evaluation of the Herndon Substation, Fresno County, California, prepared by Applied Earthworks Incorporated for Pacific Gas and Electric Company in April 2010, Herndon Substation and its control building were researched, documented, evaluated, and found to be ineligible for California and local designation due to lack of integrity on the premise of the property owner's proposal to demolish the control building. Staff visited the property on May 4th, 2018, to meet with the owner representative and to accurately document the current state of the control building, and found that the building retained sufficient integrity and appeared to be eligible for listing in the local register of historic resources. Herndon Substation was built and completed in June 1931, specifically to interconnect the 2 electrical systems of the San Joaquin Light and Power Corporation and the Pacific Gas and Electric Company. The substation was completed 1 year after the merger of the 2 organizations and signifies the end of the regional electric company and the beginning of PG&E's dominance in Northern and Central California. At the time of its construction, this new electrical technology was critical to support the growing population and continued growth of agriculture in Fresno County and the rest of the San Joaquin Valley. All that remains of the 1931 Herndon Substation is the control building. While the Herndon Substation Control Building is minimal in decoration, it embodies distinctive characteristics of the Art Deco architectural style, with elements that include smooth wall surfaces and vertical projections above the roofline that give a vertical emphasis, as well as fixed sash and casement metal windows. It was also constructed at the height of the Art Deco movement, is the only Art Deco substation remnant in Fresno County, and is one of the few examples of the Art Deco style remaining in the city of Fresno. The interior of the control building contains a battery room, equipment room, control panel room, and operator's room with ensuite bathroom enclosed by thin vertical wood paneling. The control building was converted to an unmanned station in 1963, and the working parts inside the building have been gradually removed. However, the building was still transitioning from use to vacancy in the early 2000s. Inside today are the metal framework remains and freestanding support structures that at one time housed the machinery that controlled the movement of currents on the Herndon substation site. The Herndon Substation Control Building is greater than 50 years of age and retains historic integrity. Although integrity of setting, feeling, and association have been diminished due to the replacement of structures and equipment on the still functioning Herndon Substation site, and due to the recent vacancy and removal of some equipment from the control building, the result is not a loss of these aspects of integrity, nor a loss of integrity or the ability of this resource to convey its significance. The control building meets local register criterion 1 because it is associated with the merger of Pacific Gas and Electric Company and San Joaquin Light and Power Corporation, and with the role of the substation in economic and social growth of the region, as well as criterion 3 because it embodies distinctive characteristics of the Art Deco architectural style. Because the Herndon Substation Control Building appears to be eligible for the local Register of Historic Resources, staff recommends that the Commission approve the request for designation and forward to City Council.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Is the property owner or client here to like to say anything?
I'm the cultural resource specialist for PG&E.
Okay.
And
If you want to say something, you want to come up to the microphone and give us your name and address, please, for the record?
this one here?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Matthew Armstrong. I'm the cultural resource specialist for PG&E. My work address is 1455 East Shaw Avenue, Fresno. And I have reviewed the DPR 523 form prepared by Laura. Thank you for sending that to me, by the way. I have two comments regarding this. The first is that while I agree that the connection of San Joaquin Light and Power and Pacific Gas and Electric's grid was an important historical event, I would question whether or not the removal of essentially everything but the control building allows this to successfully convey that event. Even though it does remain a substation, it is a substation that is dramatically changed from the one that existed in the 1930s. On the point of whether or not it is eligible under criterion 3, I will immediately concede I am an archaeologist, not an architectural historian. I do know that Aubrey Morlett did argue that there were other better examples of the Art Deco style within Fresno. In your presentation, you indicated that there were not. I frankly am not qualified to have an opinion on the subject, so I'll not venture into that. I will say that that does seem to be a contradiction. I don't know how that would be resolved, but that would not be up to me to determine. So those are the 2 points I would make, is that I do question whether or not the removal of the substation equipment that was originally there would allow it to retain integrity for qualification under criterion 1. For criterion 3, I think it's a question of whether or not Fresno does indeed retain a sufficient number of equally important or more important or more representative, rather, Art Deco buildings. And on that, I have no professional opinion at all. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I think we can kind of have a conversation on those 2 points. The first being regarding the integrity. we're looking at the architectural integrity of the exterior of the building. So the interior of the building could literally be gutted and repurposed, as long as the exterior of the building is what the public sees, or a reflection to the public from the street, from the outside, then we're still okay.
I understand that. Should I go back to the microphone?
Sure, thank you.
I do understand that. What I am talking about as far as the equipment, though, is the equipment exterior to the control building itself. There's discussion of a number of pieces of equipment that were necessary to run the substation as it was originally built, all of which would have been outside of the control building, none of which are still
Correct.
present. So I would argue that that would be, even though the building itself may retain its structural integrity and may retain the integrity of appearance that allows it to convey the Art Deco style, I don't know that it successfully shows the merger of San Joaquin Light and Power and PG&E grids.
Gotcha.
This is the equipment you're talking about.
Yes.
Excuse me, what is the building being used for now? Anything at all? Storage?
It is not being used for anything at the moment.
Could it be used for storage?
I don't know. I do know that when I've asked about that, I've been told that there are problems with flooding. I don't know the details of that, unfortunately. I do not know if it could be used for storage. I do know that the fact that it is within a substation in an area that has a ground grid does introduce challenges because it is an area that essentially retains an electrical charge. Would you be comfortable discussing that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to turn you over to somebody who knows much more about that than I do.
I guess my point was that, you know, if it could be utilized other than just an empty building, would there be any point in demolishing it?
I'm not sure what the future use of the.
And I'm not sure that we're here to decide its
that's right.
use.
Yeah.
I'm Jeff Croker, and we do work for PG&E. We have worked at the Herndon substation in the past. If you go back to that previous slide, it shows the original construction. There was, that building on the left was a transformer handling house. And then those tanks we took, and that big water tank that was, those were removed in order to expand the substation due to the needs of the growth of the power demand. There was just, it's one of those NIMBY things, you don't want it in your backyard, but there's a substation has to be built in a location for the transmission lines to come and go with the demand of power. They've upgraded with the solar energy coming in. They have to have a switching station in order to distribute the power. And they're landlocked, is basically, so the building is in the way of expansion of the electrical supply for all of us. So I'm torn because I love the Art Deco style. I currently have a remodeling an Art Deco home in the old Fig Garden area. I can appreciate the architecture, but as this gentleman was saying, that with it behind the fence inside a live energized substation, the public will never, when I say never, is a big word, but won't be allowed to visit the building or go inside or to be able to appreciate the architectural design, but only from outside the fence. And it's a distance from the fence to the building. And while I certainly can appreciate the architectural design, like I said, I don't know how much it can be appreciated by others besides just the PG&E workers that go in and out of the substation, because there is no access, and you have to be badged and trained, and the general public is not allowed. So it's,
Okay, well, your point taken. Is the building in danger of collapsing? Is it structurally sound is the word I'm looking for?
It appears structurally sound. I'm not a structural engineer.
I think that was even in the earthworks.
That would be what?
That was in the earthworks report, that it was structurally sound. Do I recall that correctly, Laura?
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's kind of overstepping our bounds, is that what you're saying?
No, I just, that someone has looked into it.
It seems to me our role is to sort of put blinders on and just look at the building and determine whether or not the building meets the criteria. That's really all we can do. We're not, all the other issues that you've mentioned, I think they're valid, but I don't think that's under our purview. So I think our challenge is, does this building meet the test of what would be considered a historic artifact? Is that right? That's our task.
Yes, that's correct. The commission must decide if the property is eligible for listing, and if they decide it is, then it is forwarded to city council, who makes a final decision.
And they would take those other
And
extenuating.
that would be
things
another public hearing.
Yeah, the council ultimately has the authority under the Historic Preservation Act that the city had that was approved by SHPO to determine whether or not something is historic. Like, for example, the Producers Dairy buildings that had all the controversy, they were determined to be historic by the commission, and the council said no. And I guess the council's now saying yes or something, I'm not sure. But, so that's where it stands legally.
Well, and I think speaking to the Art Deco factor of it, is it the most elaborate Art Deco building I've ever seen? No. But I think we can all look at that and ascribe that time period to it.
So on that subject, I think, Laura, you're more of an expert than I, but my understanding is there are multiple kind of iterations of the Art Deco style. There's like the zigzag moderne, the streamline moderne. I think there's like the Egyptian moderne. There's many types of what is considered Art Deco, and I think this is a fine example of what's considered the zigzag moderne. Is that correct?
I actually didn't notice any zigzags on
Well,
this
the
example.
pilasters. for
But it
example.
has the vertical projections,
Yeah.
for sure. That's a key element to the Art Deco style. And as I mentioned in the report, it's not the most elaborate example of Art Deco architecture, and as Robin noted as well. But I do feel that it embodies the Art Deco style.
I also don't think we're here to compare Art Deco in Fresno to Art Deco in other cities and substations. Is that correct?
Okay.
Yes, this is, since we're just evaluating it on the local level, we're comparing it to examples within the city of Fresno.
I believe we have other substations listed. They're more downtown.
To my knowledge, there are no other substation buildings listed, but I could be mistaken. I do know there are a few Art Deco buildings that are listed.
It might not be a PG&E substation
There's a little
building.
one by Community Hospital, right?
Yeah,
Right at the corner there.
and there's another one down.
Be one on just south
Down
of
down on
Cosmos
H.
on G Street, I think it is. on the
Yeah,
west
it
side of
also
the-
got listed, and that was, I think that one came up when the train station stuff kind of came into play. So we have, I mean, we do have other examples of, maybe not a PG&E substation, but another utility station of sorts that we have listed before. That has, I don't wanna say, but
I don't know if any of those are in an operating substation, though. That's
and they weren't. They've been abandoned for years. And it was, and whatever, so the remaining piece was that building that had been abandoned, and everything around it was gone. It kind of grew up around it, but then we had this one kind of, small, cool building that was, you know, housed many things over the course of history, but now all the extant facilities were gone and development had kind of grown up around it, but this kind of cool architectural element was still there, you know? So,
I was gonna try to bring it up, and I'm sorry, the internet seems to be
um,
malfunctioning.
so I guess that'd be, like, I understand what you're saying, the distance from the road. I mean, having gone out there myself, I even asked the security guy if I could go in and get a closer look. He said no.
I
But,
was actually pretty fascinated, you know, I've lived in the area all my adult life, really, and never been out that road all the way to
it's kind of
that.
cool
The
out
only
there.
people that go out there is the sheriff and city police to the firing range. It's
Mm,
right down the road.
And all the
Range, and then
equine
there was
people.
a lot of horse
Yeah.
equestrian
Yeah, there's
events.
stables right next door.
It's a crazy horse facility. But I suppose, you know, that 100, you know, if it's listed, you know, does that substation ever go away like other substations have in history? And
I think what
What's
we're hearing
left
is that
over?
the plan for that substation is to keep kind of
Expansion.
growing and expanding, and it's, as new technology, of course, but to continue to be live in the foreseeable
They've,
future.
they've changed from the transformer handling house where they had the oil-filled transformers where they used to actually build them, and as your report says, build, repair, overhaul, because they were so large, you didn't move them in and out. You actually refurbished them there, and that building is gone. They've moved to different types of oil-free and different types of capacitors and transformers. So they've streamlined, but there's, you know, with everything that we touch is now basically electronic. It's the need, plus the solar coming in, that there's a need to switch that, and the demand is higher. So they're looking for growth opportunities. Then to put in a substation is in somebody's neighborhood or backyard, it's not easy.
Let me know if there's any examples you would like to look at.
This is the kind
This
of
is the,
local, the site that has the local register properties by street. If you knew some of the streets.
That's the one on, that's what I'm thinking of, on Divisadero by the hospital, right?
yeah. Is it on Divisadero?
No, it's actually on Fresno.
Oh.
I mean, it's right at the corner,
Yeah.
so.
I don't think I'd call that Art Deco. No, that's a fire station.
No, fired station.
That's Art Deco.
It's down.
Oh, it's further.
It's the second,
Oh,
that one.
Yeah, that's not Art Deco, but it's a sweet little building.
Mhm.
I do know some examples of the Art Deco style that are listed, that were noted in the Applied Earthworks report, also in Fresno. The Fresno County Hall of Records on Tulare, can look at that.
Parking garage at Kerner Van Ness too.
Veterans Memorial, it has a beautiful building.
The Beckons Van and Storage was also noted on Van Ness. This one, I'm not sure. So, yes, this one was,
That picture makes it look a lot better than it does.
Especially the freeway view.
and this is historic property number 70, so it was listed pretty early on. And then there's the U.S. Post Office on Tulare. If I go back. Yeah. And the,
Substation is the most Art Deco style that we've got.
it's the most pure Art Deco example, I think.
Yeah.
And there's one more example here, the Fresno Memorial Auditorium on Fresno Street.
I think so. It's definitely Art Deco.
Which garage?
The one on Kern and, what is it? Kern and
Van Ness,
Van Ness?
Is it
It's
listed?
like a, I
right
think
across
it's,
from the Californian Hotel.
isn't it, it's not abandoned, but
Well,
Arco Garage?
it's not in good shape.
The upstairs
structurally.
parking is
That's
not
what it is.
structurally
Right,
sound
right.
for cars. But it's a great facade.
It's a great facade, you're right about that.
I believe the county was able to.
What was it?
Kern and Van.
Did the county sell it? Because we owned it at one time.
I think another architect owns it, but he leases the park to the county.
This one. Okay.
You can see how it's, I've
Yeah.
been in that building, it's very scary on the second floor.
I worked on that building.
It's very scary.
I parked my truck and looked up at the top of it.
That's like a round ramp, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I worked for the county, building maintenance.
Mm.
And it was our building at the time. Pigeons are
Yeah.
doing their number on that.
Residents, yeah.
Any other questions for clients? Property owners? Comments? Discussion? I think that this little building embodies more Art Deco than pretty much all the ones that more of the ones that we do
Pure.
have in town. You know, it's very obvious. I can understand the points that you're coming from as far as master planning the site and everything else, but as far as, you know, architecture goes and just a sweet little building, that is a sweet little Art Deco building.
I guess I do have one more question. I'm not sure which one of you can best answer. If it is approved as a local register property, will it get taken care of any better than we see it today?
That I don't know. That would be up to the people who do the planning. It is a question that I could have answered, but I could not tell you yes or no.
That may be more just my curiosity than anything officially we're supposed to go with or without. Thank you.
This could be a great museum to sort of tell the story of PG&E's impact on the valley. I know it's a substation and it's not the kind of place you want the public, but that could be a fantastic, because of the legacy that you have in the valley, that could be a great museum piece.
I would agree with that, except that whenever we enter an energized substation, we have very specific instructions on what to do to avoid an arc flash and being burned to death, which is something we wouldn't want to expose the public to. So.
Any questions? Discussion? Entertain a motion?
I will move to support the staff's recommendation that this be approved as a local register
Second?
property.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I went to any opposed pretty quick. Okay, so the motion passes, and Laura, do you want to discuss the next steps for the clients?
Sure. So once a property nominated for the local register is approved by the Historic Preservation Commission, it is then forwarded to City Council for a final public hearing and a final determination on whether it will be listed in the local register of historic resources. And I believe that must be done within 45 days. So if you need a timeline, I can speak with you further on that, Matt.
Yeah, I think we're allowed to do it at a meeting of their, somewhat of their,
I wish we had moved to outside the fence.
work a little bit as far as what we do, as long as it fits with the policy.
We can schedule it for the soonest available. Yeah.
One question that I do have is, since this was brought up by the submittal of a application for a demolition permit, I know that my management is going to want to know what the fate of that permit would be if the property is determined eligible.
So, and for this meeting, the property is being being brought forward for consideration of local designation. I believe it would have to come before HPC again if it does become listed on the in the local register to be considered for demolition. And that the Historic Preservation Commission would have a final say on that.
And in such an event as that, would it be the case that the permit could be denied?
Yes.
That's all I need to know.
And then there is an appeal process, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure it comes back to us, because I think what would happen is it would be automatically denied if it's put, because once something's put on the register, then you have, now you can, there's a process for getting something delisted from the register, which one could follow, although it's not usually very successful right after it passes,
Okay.
but there is a process. But yeah, I mean, and then once something's on the register, you have an there are affirmative obligations as the owner of something.
Is the appeal process, does that occur between now and when it goes to council?
No. You could, now it's just the council vote, essentially. Has to be held within 45 days. And so the council will make the final determination. Then afterward, there's a delisting process.
But the council, they're not determining whether or not they agree with the commission's position. They can entertain the extenuating circumstances, is that?
They can do it on whatever criteria they want. Ultimately, they don't have to use any particular criteria other than just what they would like to be listed and whatnot.
So if they made their case to the council for demolition and the council bought it, they would approve the permit.
Yes.
They would deny a recommendation on which the permit would hold true.
Would then be granted.
One other question, I know that with, for example, National Register listings, a property owner can challenge that. Would this be the process by which the property owner would challenge it if PG&E chose to do that?
We have two chances. You get the meeting, and then you can challenge. In the local historic preservation ordinance, there's the delisting process. And it goes through the, what is it? It's, Fresno Municipal Code, Section 12, Article 16.
Toward the end.
And then it is toward the end, the listing process here. Local historic. National Register.
I wish the building could be moved outside the fence.
Yep.
That would be the ideal thing.
Seeing how it's a gigantic concrete slab, I don't think that would be feasible.
I'm just,
It's 5 concrete slabs.
Plus the additional ones inside.
If
Structural integrity precludes it from.
Say it was registered and the council goes along with the recommendation, is there funding, just because it's working within PG&E's budgets, they don't allocate money to, they do, but they don't in certain income instances, and like you had brought up, would it be, if it's gonna be preserved, is there some type of funding mechanism or dollars? Because if the roof doesn't get repaired or the structure, then it's just gonna the steel structures eventually it's gonna rust and it's gonna be dilapidated and it's gonna fall apart the old-fashioned way. So it, just a question that I'm sure his boss is gonna ask, and I think it's a great way to preserve something. If it is registered, then is there a way to bring that back to, at least a watertight or some type of condition?
Yeah. We do have minimum requirements for mothballing, what we call mothballing of an old building, so you have to keep up with those minimum requirements. We have, when you have a listed property, you get to under a historic building code. And so you're not required to, when you're doing regular maintenance, or if you go to flip the building or change into something different, you can use the historic building code and not the current building code, so there's a savings cost there. We have the Mills Act, which is essentially a tax rebate program that you can benefit from there. And then newly, do we even know what it's called yet?
Yeah. Well, so far, we're calling it the Historic Preservation Mitigation Program, and that provides some extra funding for any proposed projects that are working toward preserving the historic character of listed properties. And that's a reimbursement grant that's available in the amount of $7,500 or 40% of project costs, whichever is less. So it helps make a little bit of a difference in your overall project costs that that go toward maintaining a historic building, or that go toward any kind of rehabilitation project you're undertaking. Did it say what you thought?
Well, it just said that the designation applies for 30 days, and then upon new findings, one can go through the rescission process. But usually the main thing is the council meeting.
Any other questions for us?
This is totally unrelated, but I wish you guys were on the Hanford preservation when they took down that Art Deco fire station just a couple months ago, and God, broke
Yep.
my heart to see that go.
So you're in the demo business and you have
The
to like take
demolition
down things that
business.
you, oh, that's,
I can appreciate it now that I have this house in Old Fig Gardens, Art Deco style, streamlined Madorn, and built 1933. And I found, I hired a local historian here, Bill Seacrest.
okay.
And he did a lot of research on the house and found the original drawings.
So, do you know who designed it?
Excuse me?
Do you know who the architect was?
Collins, Taylor Wheeler,
Oh,
builder.
oh, okay.
Collins, the architect, along with the wife or one of the owners of the home.
All right.
Benjamin Levy
Hmm.
had it built 1933. It's on the corner of Buckingham and Van Ness.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been a long process, but it was the original drawings he found at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo
Oh, wow.
in the Kennedy Archives, Plan 182. I bought them, and I'm thinking, I got my as-built, and they what was the eye opener? Because when they showed up, man, I'm missing a few pages here. So I called her, and she was really nice, and I said, ma'am, I'm missing some pages. I said, all I have is an elevation and basically a floor plan, and she's, that's all they had, honey. So All they gave me was the master builder took care of all that, cause I was looking for a structural, a framing, a plumbing, and there was nothing. She said, they knew what they were doing. You just agreed on what you were gonna get. And in 1933, they had a 3-car garage. There was 6 bathrooms and 5 bedrooms. And, he was, coming out of the Depression. It was quite an undertaking. And
Who was the original owner, do you know?
Benjamin Levy.
Oh, okay.
He graduated Fresno High School in 1910, and his dad or family, actually his father was the original in the area, New York Life Insurance, the one and only, and so he's into insurance and real estate. He had a couple of brothers, and it shows his biography. They're dressed up in their uniforms. They went off to war and came back, and he married a gal from San Francisco, and that's what. There was 2 elevations. I'm glad he decided on the one. The other one's like a French colonial style. Everything was square, where the house we have today is rounded. And
Yeah.
she brought some of the San Francisco flair with her, and we made it was all built out of redwood. All the hardware was stainless steel. It was a very nice home.
Houses in that neighborhood are amazing. I live not in that neighborhood, but near there, and so I go through there routinely. Yeah, some of the older houses out there are just fantastic.
That house needs, I talked to people over the years who've looked at that, because when it came on the market, it's really neat to see that one get restored. I think because it's a challenge. I think a lot of people are not up for it, because it
We got
hasn't,
down on the ground in a
because
day.
even though it's a great location, a lot of
3.5
people,
years already.
yeah.
Has it been remodeled since you got it?
No, it was like
So it's
walking
original?
into a time capsule.
Oh, wow.
The kitchen had looked like it had been updated in the 70s era, and then the master bath was updated. Other than that, still the knob and tube electricity, all the original, everything is like I said, walking all the plaster, and it was really neat. And I tried to save it along the way, to save the plaster, save this, and I finally had to take the plaster out and to get the electrical and the new plumbing. And so new air conditioning, and heating, plumbing, electrical, insulation. I was able to save the original windows. It has all the metal sash windows, 144 windows in that house.
Oh, my gosh.
And so when you saw these little sash windows, I can relate. And but they
So they're single pane, right?
they were single pane, and I welded an 1/8 inch by 1/4 inch piece on the front of the mutton, so it matches the outside frame, and it allowed me to put in a dual pane piece of glass. And I put just a little bit of tint into it, because it was the sun on the southwest exposure was.
Wait, are you talking individual panes, 144, or window
144 panes. yeah.
panes? Okay.
There's a lot of panes, and
Yeah.
been a lot of pain. And they, so I had them sandblasted and powder coated them to a black, and then the stainless steel accents, and the white, it'll be the white smooth plaster, but it's been a long time coming.
Wow.
So, and I have some big canary palms I took off some other projects, and so we're gonna put those.
That was just a jungle, right?
Oh, it used to be, that's why I was hired in the first place, to clear it,
Oh.
tear out the swimming pool.
Yeah, I
And then
remember.
after I got all that done, then I ended up working out at Deal Bus. So if I'd known that, I'd kept the pool. And, so, there's a little story behind that one too, but it's, so I can appreciate your position and your job, just because they don't make them like that anymore. So they are special. And, so there's a little bit of story and history
Yeah.
along the way from those 85 years. I was the fourth owner. So it's neat to be able to just trying to get there now.
Sounds like it's in good hands, though.
Oh yeah, it's been a work in progress.
They always are.
But
Never ends.
the previous owner neglected the upkeep, and the roof had leaked, and there were some issues with the rot, and so I had to tore all that out, redid all that, put a single ply roof up, and changed things around, and they were, back then, all the rooms were compartmentalized, so there were the solarium, and they had doors everywhere, so you could close them off, because you couldn't heat and cool everything. Well, you couldn't cool, they basically had fans, and Mr. Seacrest found some advertising literature, and Taylor Wheeler was building the track by Fresno High School, their model home was $3,650. 1934, 36 area, and several ads in the magazines and newspaper from government-funded loan programs for Electrify Your Home, the government-backed program. Interesting to see that, you know, these people, in 1935, 36, they were still advertising to electrify your home.
So did the
Yeah.
power to electrify your home come from the substation?
Well, he was built, yeah, in 31.
It was a difficult time. Actually, that's probably the substation that I think would have supplied that one. It might actually have been the Ashland sub, which dates at least to the 40s, and actually it might date back earlier than that.
Somewhere where, coming in from the Fresno High area, McKinley, 99, somewhere there.
There's a planner in my office who could actually tell us all of this, but he's not here, so.
But I went for the gas line, I went through the whole design, went through the county, so plan check, when everything got approved, and I disconnected the gas line at the property line, because I didn't want to break it during the construction or remodeling, and I didn't have no purpose for gas. So I get it all designed, and then they said with the number of BTUs you have required for this house, that service out's not gonna supply you enough. And so I had to run a new gas line from Buckingham and Wishon, all the way, high pressure line in my property, around all the way to that southwest corner of my house. So I have a 2.5-inch high pressure line coming off and around in my backyard to the house. So the number of, if I say the amount of electricity we use and the BTUs we use today, that line was put in Venice in 1947. Is what is when they put the gas line in. So it was a little 1/2-inch service for me. That was 2.5.
That's good enough. Can't even do a stovetop with a 1/2 inch now.
No.
My barbecue. But, so anyway, there's a lot of history on the street in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
But when that was just power was being brought into the neighborhoods, people had the opportunity to get the low interest loan to, you know, my neighbor's got lights and I don't, or he has a refrigerator and I don't. And
Yeah.
all of the conveniences that we take for granted today.
Well, we find, you know, with structures like this and, you know, things that were built in that period of time, they had like, it wasn't like they just did like a junky tilt up like they would do now, you know. There was architecture, like real architecture applied to, you know, a fairly or significantly utilitarian building. We just don't do that anymore.
Well, you see a return to it, though, in the last 5 or 10 years. A good example is if you look at near where I grew up in Salida, there's an overpass there. When I was a kid, the overpass that was in that location was just one of these brutal gray monstrosities. The one that's there now actually has quite a bit of. Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's a cool one.
It really is, and I've seen a lot more of that sort of thing. My sister lives up in Elk Grove, and a lot of their, you know, road design and overpasses, and even some of the utility buildings have begun to adopt a lot of those sorts of things again. So it's interesting to see a lot of that come back. I think it's probably a function of the fact that, you know, you have that post-war boom where you just have to get everything up, and so you do it as simply as you can, and now we're building a little more slowly and a little more deliberately.
Possibly so.
It's reminiscent, you walk into the Hall of Records is a great example. There's some, just that little drinking fountain that's in there, it's all posted all over the place that, so I'm gonna walk out with that thing one of these days. It's just a neat, that whole building, and I've got pictures of, they probably thought, I got asked, what are you doing taking all these pictures? Because I like it, not because I want to blow it up or anything, you know, I'm not gonna tear it down, but what's he doing here? But that's a neat example, and even to go into the Tower Theater and step back and see all that woodwork and
marble ceiling in the Hall of Records is a suspended ceiling. It's
Amazing
pretty-
what, the engineering back there was back then with what we can do today.
I don't know how many earthquakes it's gone through, but I tell you, I wouldn't want to be in that building. Cause you got 3/4 inch marble ceilings. Suspended. I crawled up in the attic one time, and they got cables with anchors with, cloth and plaster of Paris holding it up. And I go, I'm out of here.
Don't sneeze. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is chairperson's report. There isn't one. Unscheduled items.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Anything unscheduled, commission members? Staff unscheduled?
Just an announcement that last Thursday, the Hotel Fresno was approved by the State Historical Resources Commission. And it is now being forwarded to National Park Service to be reviewed by the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places. And it,
I'm sorry, I missed all that.
the,
I'm hard of hearing, so.
oh, I'm sorry, I knew that. The Hotel Fresno, it was heard before the State Historical Resources Commission last Thursday.
National?
For the consideration to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And it was approved, and it is now being forwarded to the National Park Service and to be considered for designation by the keeper of the National Register. So,
Wow.
exciting.
Very cool.
Good.
Very cool. Since
And-
our, go ahead, sorry, something else?
Oh, no, just that the decision should be made within 45 days, so should have that final nomination form signed within that period of time.
Excellent.
And there were no issues. I went to the meeting in Palo Alto. There were no issues brought up about it, so even better.
Yes.
Very good. Since our public left, I don't need to ask them anything. The next meeting is June 25th. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.